Join the Brave Enough podcast with Julianne Williams. Renew, recreate, recover you.
Hello, everyone. This is Julianne Williams, and welcome to my podcast, Brave Enough, Renew, Recreate, Recover You. If you like today's content, if you would please do me a favor and like, subscribe, and share. That would help me get the content out to more people and to move me up on the algorithms to hopefully help more people who are grieving in this world. But today what I want to talk about is parenting lessons and struggles only a only parent can understand. No one ever plans to be a widower, or single parent. But some things are beyond our control, and the only way to live a peaceful life is to find some solutions for these things as they are, and to try to understand that you're not alone in these challenges. You know, honestly speaking, whether your spouse's death made you a single parent in an instant, you landed this role after a divorce, or the parent of your child has opted to remove him or herself from doing their part as a parent, this is a full-time job that is not for the weak of heart. I know when my spouse died unexpectedly when I was 36 to suicide, he left me, a widowed parent of two little kids. They were 7 and 3. And at the time, I did things that were practical to me, or at least seemingly so. I tried my best to let my kids grieve, and I tried to support them emotionally. Through it all, I know I chose many good things, but I also made more mistakes than I would have liked. We all know that single-only parenting is hard, but few things helped me when I felt completely lost. Now that they're young adults, I've had the opportunity to take the time to think about some of the struggles I battled through and some ideas I felt did help us and heal us and get us to this new normal that we're living now. So I think first what I want to do is start with 6 difficult lessons that I learned. Again, did some of them very well, had a few hiccups in a couple of them, and some of them I had to kind of regroup and restart. But the first thing in terms of when we are the only parent and talking about the circumstances around that, we have to be honest with our babies. Most important thing that I have learned, complete honesty. Now, there may be a number of things that can be difficult for you to tell them, including the cause of a parent's death, the reason why the parent decided to not be a part of their life and their raising, something that is just a fact. Me, when I had to tell my children that their dad had died by suicide, I only had, a few hours to decide what I wanted to do, because it was the middle of the night when the police came to tell me about the situation. And, it was already hard enough, and I didn't want to make it even harder. It was wretched, right? I mean, who wants to tell their children about that? But, I live in a small town, and there's not a lot that's able to be kept, quote, secret, especially in my situation, because there were a number of children that had lost their parents in our small town, but certainly no one had lost their father or mother to the circumstances in which my kids were. They just weren't common. However, when I stepped back, I realized the worst thing, at least in my mind, was for my kids to find out on the playground how their father had died. I just didn't feel like they deserved the shock of that. Additionally, I didn't want to violate my trust with them. It was extremely important to me that they knew that we had an authentic relationship and that we could face things together when we were honest. So my suggestion is tell them the truth about the cause of their parent's death, whether it's a car accident, a disease, a drug overdose. You may have to give the heartbreaking news that their other parent has made the choice not to fully take on responsibility of raising them and being a part of their life. None of those are fun conversations, and they're not easy stories to tell. But no matter how much you try to hide it, your kids will eventually get to know the truth, and you risk them feeling betrayed by their sole parent. Remember that you truly are the most important person in their life, and they absolutely trust you inherently. So I suggest that you have the tough conversation in the beginning to mitigate the damage that could be caused by lies and mistrust later. So that was one of the first things that I found really difficult as a single parent. The second thing that I found that was, definitely a difficult lesson was all of the times that were remembrances. So my second bit of advice is plan the anniversaries and remembrances with them when you've experienced a death or a loss. So, I was recently in touch with a widowed mom who lost her spouse, and she was very anxious about that first death anniversary. She was confused and depressed about the day, and she just didn't know how to spend it. And so I encouraged her to talk to her kids and exchange her feelings with them and see how they felt as well. I told her, I feel this would strengthen your bond with your kids, and you'll also be able to figure out some ways to mark the occasion respectfully. I know for me, I made the decision to do a memorial at the grave site on the first anniversary of my husband's death. Now, looking back, that may have not been the best decision for us. My daughter was very emotional, and rightfully so, and it really was just too much for her. It was just brutal. And while I thought it was going to be helpful to honor him, I actually think once we left, we all felt a little more sad than when we had arrived at the cemetery. And they were little. They were 8 and 4. But looking back again, I wish I would have spent just a little bit more time either involving them or preparing them. And I'm not advocating for any specific remembrance. I'm merely sharing my experience and suggesting that even when they're little, they're intuitive enough to know what might be helpful or painful for them. Now, at this point, what I do is, as young adults, is I remind them when it's their dad's birthday, the anniversary of his death. I remind them of our wedding anniversary because that was a really happy day for me and the reason that they're here. And so we each have our own way of honoring that. My daughter, she's very comforted by going to the cemetery. She likes to put flowers and decorations. I see my son, he tends to connect with items that belong to his dad. I tend to be more quiet about my memories and reflect privately. And so there's no right or wrong way to remember. And so my lesson here was to spend more time with my children and help lead the way to help them find how it fits their wiring and their personality and their emotional responses, and for that to be a healthy way to think about their dad on special occasions. But again, it's something I think it's worth talking about. We don't want to forget it. And so I have just found over time that I've taken the lead of my children, which is different than what I did on the first year anniversary. The third thing that I learned, parenting alone, is that, we do have to give our children choices. So clearly the death of their dad and any loved one, it's always something that makes us feel very out of control. And in my kids' case, losing their dad was completely out of their control. So whenever you get a chance, make sure you allow your kids to make healthy choices on their own. I'm literally talking about the simplest of things, like picking from the menu while dining in a restaurant, or, what they could do in their free time. The point of this is that it helps them be independent, and it helps them develop the confidence they need to face the hardships in life. And again, this doesn't need to be a free-for-all. Giving kids too many choices can be overwhelming. As a matter of fact, I talk to people about this all the time. In psychology, there's this principle called the illusion of choice. And I found this to be a very perfect balance for my kids. So to employ this method of choice, you give 2 or 3 things that they can pick. So that means if it's time to get dressed, you can let them maybe pick from 2 shirts or 2 outfits. Or do they want to have story time or shower time first in the evening, during their bedtime routine? This empowers them, and again, it helps get the task at hand accomplished with a lot less drama a lot of the times. But importantly, what it really does is it gives them some control and allows them to feel confident, and it makes them have the ability to ground. The fourth lesson that I learned while single-only parenting is to surround my children with trusting people. So, you're the surviving partner, either through death or divorce or, just someone that decided to not be a part of your life. And, during this time, you're the most important person in your child's life. And, unfortunately for me, the harsh reality was I couldn't be with them 24/7, even though I wanted to be, and you may not be able to either. So, you may have to go do things. We have to go to work. We have to go shopping. We have to, go to doctor. We have to do all of the things that make life happen. And so I suggest that, because these things have to happen, you should accept the help of people who genuinely care for you and your kids. I was very blessed. I have a very supportive family and a really wonderful network of friends. The most important thing I had to learn to do is to ask for help. I tend to be very independent, fiercely so. So this was a very difficult concept, for me to embrace. What I did learn is that my children benefited from time with their grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, their friends that, in school, and even friends that are part of our family. And so, for me, when I could, I would return the favor. That made me feel a little bit more independent myself. But, we just can't be everything to everyone, nor can we stop doing the things needed to support our families or in our household. So the lesson that I learned is people that you trust and love, it's wonderful to surround them, your children with them, because it not only helps you, but it is also really good for the kids. So the fifth thing is you need to give yourself permission to be an imperfect parent. You're trying hard, and quite frankly, that's enough. You do not have to prove your love for your kids to anyone. Just like people who are married and have a two-parent household make mistakes, a single-only parent gets to make some too. So give yourself some freedom, and don't pressure yourself to be the perfect parent, because it's really not a competition, and we don't get a prize for it. The outcome is really raising children who become productive and happy adults. So just remind yourself that you're going to be better at things with time if there's something that you feel like you're struggling with. But in the end, and I still say this today, being a good enough parent is good enough for me. Now, one of the traps I found myself in that made it hard for me to allow myself or admit that I was an imperfect parent was that I felt I had to overcompensate for the loss of their dad. And so I tried really hard to be both the mom and the dad. I learned over time that I could be the best mom I could be, and that was going to be good enough. I really wasn't a dad, and I needed to not pretend that I could be one. The other struggle I have experienced and still do at times is feeling inadequate because my children, had only one parent, and sometimes I felt like maybe I wasn't giving them as much as those who had a two-parent household. And again, I believe that the two-parent household is the best case scenario. I think that's the way we were meant to parent. But with that said, that does not make single-only parents less than. As a matter of fact, being on my own forced me to set priorities and not take for granted the daily time I had with my kids. And again, I just want to remind you, you are more than enough. I have learned over time that just because a child has two parents, it doesn't mean that they are better than you and me. It doesn't mean they make better decisions or they have a perfect household. The atmosphere in your household is what you decide to create, and you can create a loving, healthy home by yourself. So that was something, again, that even now I think about a lot. But we can be imperfect parents, and we can create the household that we believe is best for us and our children. And perfection is not what we need to aim for. The last thing on sort of some of the difficult single-only parenting lessons, number 6, is to communicate your limitations. So again, being a single-only parent means sort of bigger responsibilities without breaks. I had a lot of friends that were divorced, and they had their children, certain days of the week and for dinner or for weekends. And they did yearn for their children to be with them the whole time. But on the other hand, they did get a break. And when you're a single-only parent, that's just not an option. You may realize at points that you need space and you've got to find some inner peace. And just because you want that space, it doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It actually shows that you're a living human being who's tired or worn out or just tapped out. So I think it's perfectly fine to tell your kids, how you feel, that you need their support. They can help you with chores, other things like that. You have to engage in self-care because self-care is a part of the way you can revive to allow yourself to be your best self at home and at all the other areas in your life, because we don't have limitless energy. So, some examples I thought about is, when my kids would ask me to play with them, sometimes I would have to say it's just not a good time. Now, you don't just dismiss them and say that. You can offer an alternative, like I'll play with you as soon as I'm done, with my work. It's going to be about 15 minutes. Or, let's, you play your toys now or watch a video, and I am going to finish what I am doing. But then as soon as it's bed and bath time, we can do this, this, and this, and you can let them know you have to get it done. Now, I know it's hard when they're really, really small, but they may not understand all the things that you have to get done, but you absolutely can have the conversation and tell them when you'll be spending time with them. And that's okay. You're not limitless. The other thing you can do is offer, more time to look forward to, like on weekends or, like I said, reading the book later. Because, we're not ordinary parents when we're single-only parents. I mean, I'm going to say it. I think we're kind of superheroes. We are managing everything in our household. And so we do have limitations. We need to normalize the fact that we can set boundaries. So, again, just give yourself a break and then just let the kids know where you are. All right, so then I said I was going to talk about 5 struggles that single-only parents have. And quite frankly, I guess I knew them when I was married, but I certainly had my spouse by my side, and I could not understand what the reality of it looked like. And so, I was probably guilty of making judgments about the things that I'm going to talk about now, just like everybody else. However, the more we talk about it, and the more that people who support us can learn these things that we are facing, in our household behind the closed door, maybe it would be helpful. So the first struggle that I had was I always felt like I was being judged. So, the biggest difficulty I think you'll face is that the world around you will judge you, no matter what they are. They may even do that quickly without considering, the circumstances of how you ended up in a situation of being a single-only parent. The people including the closest ones, sometimes jump, to conclusions without even knowing the complete truth about what's going on. And, the amount of people who assume and what they assume about our lives is just, to me, astounding. And, they can be very cruel. And I'm going to give you an example of that. But, you may hear things like a parent should not work, or a parent shouldn't date after their spouse's death, or only irresponsible women get pregnant before they get married, or only women pick men who, irresponsible women pick men who aren't going to stick around, or vice versa if you're a single dad. But these people don't understand that those of us who are in the circumstance of single-only parenting, we have to make difficult decisions in order to secure our child's future. So we may go to work. I had to go to work after my husband passed, and a lot of people do date and remarry and have relationships. And quite frankly, I don't know if they think that women who had, a partner or a spouse or men, because there are women who are abusive as well that are abusive, that they should have stayed there, and not let them go, which we know is terribly worse for a child, and instead of putting themselves in a position where someone's going to judge them about whether or not they were doing the right thing for their family. And no choices in this world of single-only parenting are easy. And quite frankly, I don't think anybody knew anything about the decisions that I was having to make every day. They instead just wanted to kind of look and see what they thought I was doing. So an example of this, and I did a short video on it, but I recently heard from my daughter and her partner that there's a guy in my hometown here who had some words to share, and it was in regard to his opinion of how I raised and supported my children. What happened is my daughter's partner was buying an item for from this person for her car, and it was on offer up, so she picked it up, and he wanted to know who she knew in town, because it's a small town, we got to know. So she told him, and then he openly criticized the fact that I traveled while I worked to support my family. He told her that I left my children a lot, and that must have made them very lonely. What he didn't know is that my husband died with no life insurance or any other provision for our well-being. So, while my choice was difficult, it required a significant amount of sacrifice, my children were abundantly loved by me and my family. I went on every single field trip, even if I was awake for 22 hours flying home from a meeting. I rarely missed any of their sports. I attended every parent-teacher conference. I was on the baseball board. I had a Girl Scout troop. And all the other days that I was home, I made them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, conversely, this person engaged in serial infidelity and chose to leave his family after being exposed. My guess is that he wasn't with his children every day either. However, that was his choice, and it wasn't for the purpose of taking care of his family. Now, is that my business? No, and I would never have mentioned it. And matter of fact, I forgot about it because it's not important to me, except I think it's a great example about how people can spew opinions about whatever it is they think is their business. But spewing opinions to someone else's children about their parent, especially if it's their only one, is really bad form. And I hope that this person thinks a bit about his lack of kindness. Now, quite frankly, I do take his interest in how I made my life work as a widow all these years and raised my kids by myself as a compliment, because you know what? I did it. And it was hard, but it's all come out okay. But, these are the things how people judge. They don't look at what their circumstances are, but they're very happy to look at yours when you're the single only parent, because usually we get here through tragedy. And I would just say that, no one knows what happens behind your front door, and it's none of their business. The Bible is very clear about the responsibility of those around us to support widows and children who don't have a father. I think this applies to widowers and parents who have lost the love and support of their spouse or father or mother of their children. So, kindness rules, and judging is not what we think is kind. So I want you to take it all as like a grain of salt, because the fact is you are more than enough, and you know what is best for you and your children. So if you're being judged by someone, remind yourself that unless they have walked in your shoes, it is not their place to impose their opinion on you or about you in any way. I encourage you to hold your head high and keep moving, because only small minds worry and form opinions about how we manage our circumstances. And you, my friend, are more than that. All right, the second thing, and I know that was a long one, and I apologize. But the second thing that single-only parents struggle with, and probably it's not appreciated, is that, we have money worries. We're living without a partner, and that also means that we're the one who's going to work, and we're going to bring the food to the table and pay all the bills and rent, child's tuition, medical care expenses, etc. We have to take care of all of these things on our own. There is literally no one to fall back on. You are not the other income, you are the bread and butter. And it's interesting, I just kind of looked at some surveys and polls out there. And there was a survey it's called the Pew Research, and it said that single moms earn 4 times less than married mothers. Now, I think times are changing some, but I do think, and it could be in many different areas. Women still tend to be paid less than men. And, we're aware when we're the single only parent that there's, just like a handful of money isn't enough to raise your child in a comfortable life. And, for single dads, they also have the weight of not having that second income and someone to help them. And then we also have other expenses, right? Like maybe we have to have more babysitting time or hours or whatever. So it's just very difficult. Single parents still also have to pay for sports and field trips and school clothes and a place to live and college, because that was part of my decision. Because, one thing for me that was top of mind was to have a college fund for my children as much as I could put away. And so I worked extra hard so I could give them a stable future since their childhood was more than challenging. And, that meant more sacrifices. However, I do know they would both tell you that they're grateful and feel very blessed to have a solid start as an adult and to have an education. But all of these financial decisions, that we make, they're all on our own. And I know the pressure can be overwhelming at times. And I just want others to understand the stress you have to battle in this regard. So, if someone's hearing that, that's something to keep in mind. A third really big struggle that I had was having to explain the situation about my husband to my kids. And so I think, when you're a single parent, you start feeling like you owe everyone an explanation as to how, you end up in this challenging circumstance. And, in the beginning, you explain it to those around you. I guess what it would feel like obligation. You feel like you have to tell them. But really, it's no one's business but yours and your kids. However, children ask questions, where's my dad, or why doesn't my mom come to see me, and many of those things that wrench our hearts. And no one who has had to answer those questions knows how hard it is to look at a human being that there's no greater love for and tell them something that is disappointing or upsetting. So, unless you've had to do that, it's very easy to not have the understanding of the pain that it causes both you and your kids. And, only the love of a parent can comfort a child, in providing these answers. So it's only up to us. So, again, it's a very difficult situation. So for those people who are supporting a single only parent, whether they're a family member or a friend, remember that this is something that's really, really hard. The fourth out of the 5 things, that I struggled with, and I still do, is that I realized I really do have to deal with it all alone. And again, I have a beautiful family and a really wonderful network of friends, but it's still all my responsibility. Being a single parent is hard work, and it is full-time duty. And you don't really have anyone to share that burden with. So, those nights when your child is sick and you still have to go to work in the morning, or you had a long day at work, but, you have to come home and make dinner, do homework, give baths, bedtime stories. That all makes for long days with no rest and no support. All of the chores, such as washing your car, taking out the trash, doing laundry, grocery shopping, there is no one to help in all of these activities, and you are still caring for your children, everything that they need. There's no telling your child to go ask their other parent, or, handing them off when you've hit the end of your patience. So it's hard to do it on your own, and I just want to validate that that's true and it's real, and you don't have to feel bad about it. And sort of the last thing about this that was really hard for me, and probably will be forever, is those milestones in your child's lives. You experience them by yourself. I think most of us planned on sitting with our spouse, cheering on our son playing football, or watching our daughter, playing volleyball. And for me, one thing I still kind of dread is the day that my daughter gets married and I don't get to see her dad walk her down the aisle. Married people take this stuff for granted, and our kids still deal with it as well. So, we have to muster up the strength to smile and enjoy all of these milestones, even through our own broken dreams, and sometimes through the broken dreams of our children. So, that is a struggle that, unless you're a single parent, you just don't understand. And then the last thing is, taking care of yourself is last on the list. That's why it's last on my list here as number 5. Because we know parenting's full of sacrifice, even when you have a partner. But when you're a single parent, you have more responsibilities to take care of, quite frankly, than you can handle. At least I felt I could most of the time. It takes all of your energy, takes so much mental strength. So really, we have to take care of ourselves as single parents. We have to eat a good diet. We need to sleep. We have to relax. And I know that you don't feel like you get time to invest in yourself to restore your mind and your energy. And I know that sometimes I know for me, all you want to do is go get your nails done, go to the spa, meaning, like get a massage or take a walk or just take a bath by yourself, whatever it is. But you can't because, you're thinking about all of the things that you have to do because there's no one that's going to pick up the slack. And single or married, a lot of people, most people put their kids' needs before their own. But when you're a single parent, the challenges to do that are much greater. And I know this for a fact. I've been both. I've been a married parent and I've been a single-only parent. And I can tell you that I was a much better parent when I was a married parent. And I also had a little bit more extra time and backup, and it made a big difference. And people don't understand the toll it takes when you have been up all night and you still have to go to work, and so the last person in your world to get taken care of is you. And I'm not quite sure the levity of this is understood by people who don't have to do it on their own. And there are very few like girls' nights or guys' weekends or whatever it is. And I even think of like when I would just want to get my nails done and I'd have to take my kids with me and they were little and, and believe me, it's not their fault. This is all my choice. But, all I worried about the whole time was if my kids were going to disturb someone. So it wasn't like I got to sit and enjoy the hand massage as much as I would have in the past because I had to also keep them kind of entertained, but I still wanted to get my nails done. So, I just tried the best that I could, but it wasn't as I didn't enjoy it probably quite as much as I would have if I didn't have them there. And quite frankly, I bet they didn't enjoy it at all. So it was probably a two-way street. But again, most things like just getting your nails done are much less complicated when you have a spouse. So I want to encourage you to find little ways of taking care of yourself. And I did a short podcast on some self-care tips, and I hope you take the time to listen to that because those are the things that helped me. But anyway, I just wanted to say, the last one is people don't understand a lot of times how hard it is to work that time in for yourself when you're the single-only parent. All right, I know I was a little bit long today, so to close up the topic, I just wanted you to know that you're not alone. Because I had my 6 difficult lessons and my 5 struggles, and maybe these are things you have experienced, and so I just wanted to share those and maybe give a few tips after I've had time to think about them, about things I wrestled with when I was raising my children on their own. And, hopefully, if you share some of these challenges, it will help you to know that they're part of the single-only parenting role. And, you're going to reestablish your household with a dynamic that you want. It's just that it takes time, and we have these other things that are floating in the background that we have to deal with as well. And so I do hope that, the realities that I've highlighted around single parenting brings to light, some things that people who know and love a single parent could also be, energized by to step in a little bit more and help out. And I know I certainly didn't have the knowledge of the 2 struggles that I would be facing, when I was married, because I could have never planned that my husband would not be with me. So know that these struggles are all common for all of us. There's nothing you're doing wrong. As a matter of fact, you're amazing, you're loved, and you are more than enough. So thank you for listening today.
If you are inspired by this podcast, leave a review and share it with your friends. You can always connect with Julianne Williams at juliannewilliams.com.